Hello, Average Flatlanders. Today I'm going to cover an interesting topic, how to plan for Boundary Water Area canoe trips. Today I'm going to go over everything you need to know about how to plan your next Boundary Waters Wilderness canoe trip. When I did this for the first time, I didn't even know where to start. And you don't know what you don't know. The permits, the rules of canoes, on, what to bring, what to plan for. It's all kind of a mystery. If you start Googling around, you get a lot of forums. You start diving into Boundary Water Canoe Area trip ideas. You've never done it before. The information is kind of scattered and conflicted around chat websites. There's really not just one site you can go to. And honestly, the Forest Service websites aren't really that helpful about how to plan for a trip and what you need to know. Kind of the must-knows for the Boundary Waters. It's going to be a quick video, but I just want to go through a quick, simple list of things you might or might not be aware of if you're trying to plan your first Boundary Water Canoe Area trip and you've never been up there and you're kind of like, I don't even know where to start. So here goes nothing. I'm not listing them in any particular order, but these are just things that I would tell someone who told me they were going to start planning their first Boundary Water Canoe Area trip and they wanted to start somewhere. This is what I would tell them. The first thing is it does require a backcountry wilderness permit to enter the Boundary Waters. You can't go into one without one. And also there is a max of 9 persons and 4 canoes per permit. So that's important to know. You need a permit and the permits are limited. The other thing people aren't necessarily aware of off the bat is that the wilderness permits that are required, they are issued per entry point. The Boundary Waters has different entry points and you can only enter the Boundary Waters via the entry points, and you have to get a permit for a particular entry point. You can only enter that entry point with that permit. And on top of that, the entry points have limits on the number of permits issued per day during the season, usually starting, I think, in the spring, and then it stops in October. You still need a permit outside those times, but they're not limited. But honestly, the majority of people go during the summer, fall, spring, and you're gonna need a permit ahead of time. And remember, they limit how many permits they issue per day per entry point. So you have to get your permit early if you're looking at a particular spot. Also, you have to list all the people that are going on the Boundary Water Canoe permit. You can't just willy-nilly just, get the permit and not know who's going. You need to actually have the names of everyone who's going on the permit. And as well, the permits fill up fast. So if you go to recreation.gov and you search for Boundary Waters, you can actually see the availability of the different permits at the different entry points for the Boundary Waters year round. So you can go and just look and say, is there permits available for the day I want to enter? And is there any left? Can I get it? And you can go ahead and book it early. Little side note as well, if you're renting a canoe from an outfitter, a lot of times these outfitters will book your permit for you. And one thing that catches up a lot of people, and I've seen even people talking about this on YouTube, they get caught up, is that if you're booking your permit yourself, and you have to physically pick your permit up at the ranger station. So you need to check beforehand the hours of that ranger station that you're going to. Make sure you call them, make sure they're going to be open, because you have to get your permit from them. So I've heard of people going and ending up at a ranger station after the hours where they're not open and they're unable to get their permit because they're closed down. So you really need to plan ahead, because you're going to have to pick up that permit at a certain ranger station depending on what entry point you're going in. So you got to plan ahead. You really need to plan ahead if you're not getting your permit from an outfitter and you're going to get your permit yourself. You need to plan into your trip what time you're going to get to the ranger station, what ranger station, where's it at, are they open? Do that research so you don't end up like some of the people on YouTube, having to wait in your car all night till the next morning. As well, when I first started researching the Boundary Waters, it's kind of hard to find good maps because, of course, you can use GPS units and things, but it's always a good idea to have a physical map, and it's kind of hard to find them. You can, if you go online, a lot of times the National Geographic maps will come up and they're okay at best, but it definitely needs something a little bit better than that. They'll give you a general idea. One of the best ones to go to is the voyagermaps.com. They have a great selection of maps, of really detailed maps, and then also Fisher maps. It's the other one. Just plan ahead, get your maps ahead of time. REI a lot of time can carry these kind of maps because the Boundary Waters are popular to go to, so you can find them there. I found them there myself. Definitely go to Voyager Maps or Fisher Maps and kind of look where you're going, plan ahead, and get the lakes you're going to, and you're plan your trip, and you'll be able to get the correct map. Another thing people don't realize when entering the Boundary Waters for the first time or planning the first trip is you really need to plan your route carefully beforehand based on what entry point, what lakes you want to go on, and you need to be able to understand portages, their difficulties, how long they are and how hard they are. You need to be able to research online, look at what people said. Don't just wing it. I think that's a bad idea. Portages can vary in length and difficulty, and depending on who's going in your group, you really need to spend a ton of time beforehand planning your route and beforehand, so you know where you're going, how many portages, where they're at, and how far they are and how difficult they are. Another thing people might not realize is that you can't take metal or glass containers when you're going, so you have to plan that when you're planning your food. Obviously, they exclude things like fuel canisters and things like that, but yeah, for your food, they're not allowed in the Boundary Waters. You get in trouble if they catch you with metal or glass containers. As well as you cannot reserve the campsites, they're first come, first serve, and you can only camp at a designated Forest Service campsite within the Boundary Waters. You can't just camp and start a fire wherever you want. You can only have a fire inside the metal ring at a designated Forest Service campsite. And also, these campsites do include wilderness latrines, which is pretty nice. And another thing that they ask when you're in the Boundary Waters is you can only gather dead and downed wood that's easily broken by your hand and smaller than your wrist. So you can't just go cutting down live trees in the Boundary Waters for your firewood. Another lesser known rule that can get you caught up is that you're only supposed to clean your dishes and clean your fish if you're fishing at least 200 feet from shore. So I know that's kind of strange for a lot of people, but it is a rule and you need to follow it. Again, if you're not used to these canoe trips in the Boundary Waters at all, you need to have a dry bag for your stuff. The Boundary Water can get a lot of rain. Of course, you're on the water and you need to prepare ahead of time to get wet and keep your essential gear dry. When you're doing a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters, you should always have a dry bag. Sometimes people ask about firearms, and firearms are actually allowed in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area because it is federal land, so you're allowed to take guns. They're not prohibited. But of course, all rules and regulations like hunting and stuff still apply. And you're not supposed to discharge a gun within certain distance of people and campsites, obviously, but they are allowed. Again, you should also make sure you hang your food in a bear safe manner in a bear bag in a tree. And of course, a lot of people go fishing in the Boundary Waters, so you need to purchase your fishing license ahead for Minnesota before you go. And because of weather and having other people in the Boundary Waters, you need to have backup plans for campsites and routes in case of bad weather or just a busy time of year. And last but not least, but very important, you need to have your exit date and instructions left with someone who will contact the nearest ranger station if you don't return and contact with them within an agreed upon time. A lot of accidents happen in the Boundary Waters. People get lost, people get hurt. So just like anytime you're going in the wilderness, it's a very remote area. You need to have plans set up with people where they expect you back at a certain time and they'll take action if you don't show up. Now, this wasn't an all-inclusive list, but I hope it should get you started if you're planning your very first Boundary Water trips. Boundary Waters are beautiful, or it's a remote piece of wilderness that's rare in today's world. Don't underestimate how far from help you will be and plan ahead. Go ahead and go to the Forest Service website and you can read all about the rules and regulations. And if you go on YouTube, there's a lot of people who obviously taken videos and stuff about the Boundary Water, so I hope you just plan ahead and do your research and follow the rules. Have a good time.